Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our financial management and financial skills and money management webinar with Anglo American. Really happy to welcome Sarah, John and Rodrigo from Anglo American, who are going to be speaking to us and sharing tips, advice and their experience on all things financial, hopefully. Welcome, Sarah. I'm going to hand over to you. If you could take it away.
Yeah, I thought, thank you very much. And it's an absolute pleasure to be there. I'm not going to share slides. I'm not going to bore people with a whole bunch of numbers. I want to introduce, I think it would be good for Rodrigo and John and myself to quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Sarah Byrne Quinn. I run transaction execution at Anglo American, which I do, it's M&A, so I buy and sell kind of companies and do a lot of commercial work. I am not an accountant. I am not a financial advisor. So anything we talk about here is just from our personal experience and to give you some advice. But Rodrigo, why don't you do a very quick introduction? Yeah,
so I'm Rodrigo. I work in Sarah's team, also buying, selling and assets. I'm originally from Brazil. Been in Anglo for about 13 years now.
Excellent. And John?
Hi, everybody. I'm not an accountant, but I am an economist. So I'm a distant, but possibly a strange cousin of our accountancy friends. I've worked for Anglo American for about 15 years, based in London. And I look after a few things, including our community development work. So I think I hand over to Diego.
Hi, I'm Diego. I am the principal for the Migrant Leaders Involvement and Program at Anglo American. I am the head of facilities and corporate real estate. I am a chartered accountant, but I'm still here to learn. So it's a pleasure. I've been in Anglo American for 8 years, and it's been a pleasure working with Fawzi and Elam with migrant leaders. So thank you all.
Yeah, and can I encourage people to ask questions? No question is too kind of vague, or don't feel stupid asking questions. You know, all questions are welcome. So either do it in the chat, raise your hand or whatever. But hopefully you find it interesting. Now, the topic is kind of financial money management, but I thought I'd go through just a few phases of what that means to me. Now, I'm a mother of 2 boys. They're now 22 and 25. And I actually canvassed them. And I said, you've lived with me. I've been giving you advice all your life. And they rolled their eyes. And I said, what's been helpful and what hasn't? Because there's a huge amount of information out there. And I do encourage everyone, whether you are going to train to be a nurse, whether you're going to be a contractor or a plumber or an investment banker, there is no excuse not to learn, right? This is a fundamental skill set that everybody should have. I've got these, I actually went and got some books. And there are tons of, you know, kind of managing your money one-on-one, manage your money for students, how loans work, how mortgages work. You need to know this. This is a fundamental skill that everybody should have. So, you know, we're going to talk about a few things here, but please, 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 throughout your life, understand your money, understand investments, understand checking accounts, understand credit, and it's all out there. And whatever you do, please, if you're going to be a doctor, it's really important. Anything, this is a fundamental skill set. It's like riding a bicycle. It's a fundamental skill set that everybody should have. So that is my first one, is that everyone should have this as a fundamental skill, and it's not difficult to get the information. I looked on the website. It's a wonderful group of people you have. It's really excited. Yeah, you've got bright young people that are on at the beginning of their kind of journeys. They're going to school, university, getting their first jobs. And I thought that we could actually start with education. Now, people sit there and say, well, what does education have to do with money? Well, actually, education has everything to do with your own money, because education facilitates your jobs. Education facilitates your opportunities in life, right? And also, especially with university, education can be expensive. And what I would say, the advice I gave to my boys and their friends is not all education is created equal, right? So when you're looking at your education of what you want to do, have a mindset of where it's going to take you. And there are also alternatives to a traditional university. I have a niece and a nephew doing apprenticeships at IBM and a software company. Apprenticeships, you get paid, but you also get the education. So education, all education is not equal. And again, from my own experience, and I'll pass it over on education to kind of John, Rodrigo, and Diego, is when I first started looking at universities, I sat there, my love in life is art history. But I did my research. It is very, very hard to make a living in art history. You get an art history degree and you can go and sit at a desk at an art gallery. That's fine. That could be someone, but my ambitions were bigger than that. So I sat there when I went to university. I actually did economics with a business minor. And then I actually took a semester off and I went to Spain and studied art history. I realized that there's a big difference between what I'm studying to help my career and help me be successful in a career in life and what was a hobby, right? So I don't know if you have a similar story. Diego looks like he was nodding along with me, but that's my first lesson, is not all education is created equal. Diego?
No, I'm agreeing. I really like your advice, and it's funny because I had a similar experience in a totally different industry and area, and I think the point about learning was actually interesting because I became a chartered accountant well after I was already with a degree and a master's in business finance and administration. So I think I'm just resonating your story. We're not that different, Sarah, although I can't create any art to save my life. So I was nodding because it's I'm also getting to know you a little bit better, Sarah, so in your background. So sorry to be nodding, but it means that I'm excited to hear, and agreeing, and it's great how similarities that we have. So thank you for including me in this conversation.
No, absolutely. And I don't know, Rodrigo and John, if you have any, when you were thinking about education and what you would study and why you would study it, and how you actually decided on your degree. If you have, I don't know, Rodrigo, if you have a story with that one.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar. So when I was at school, I was always a very good student. And I liked most things. There wasn't anything that I was like struggling with. But the only thing I knew when I got to the dreaded age of having to choose where to go, when you really don't know at that age where you should go. But I didn't want to do anything to do with like medicine, and I would never be a doctor. That's the only thing I knew. But pretty much everything else was on the cards, and I really didn't know what to do. And I kind of did what you did. It was like, well, where do I want to go? What ambitions do I have? And trying to find careers that could fit within that. And I could make a living out of it. Not just something that I love, because I quite liked history and geography and things like that. But I was a bit like, not sure. Am I going to be able to make a living out of it? But I always liked kind of macroeconomics and understanding economy, and I said, well, maybe I should go that way. And I ended up doing economics, like most people in this course seem to have done. So I ended up doing economics, which has a little bit of history in it, at least the kind of university I went to it has a lot of history, the Industrial Revolution, to study all of that. So I quite liked it, but then that's not the end of it, because as you get out of university with a degree of like economics, you can go so many different ways. Like Diego ended up in a place which is completely different from yours, which is completely different from John's, and we all kind of went to similar universities. So the choices never ends, but I think you need to be thinking ahead all the time as to where you want to go, what's important in your life. Is it kind of work-life balance, or are you really driven by money? Are you really driven by kind of positions? You need to start thinking about where you want to go. But the first choice is, for me, was choosing a career that I could enjoy, but I could also make a good living out of it.
And John, I don't know if you have a few seconds, and then I can move on to, this is why education is important, because our next topic is actually going to be work, which is how you make the money.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. My experience was in some ways a bit similar to Rodrigo. But so there were two people in my family before me who got to university, my dad and my older brother. My dad did chemistry at university and became an industrial chemist for a chemicals company. And then my older brother did economics and worked for a bank. And so I kind of had this view that you should know what you want to do, and then your degree gets you ready for your job. But I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So I got some very good advice, which was, I did a joint honours degree, economics and geography, and the teacher that told me to do that said, well, that gives you options. And I thought I might want to be a teacher at the time. He said, well, if you want to be a teacher, do joint honours, because then you can teach 2 subjects. That's more attractive. But even if not, as Rodrigo says, an economics degree, if you're in the social sciences side of things, is very open. Just as things like maths and engineering, if you're more onto the STEM side of things, those also are degrees that keep your options wide open. And so if you don't know what you want to do, try and pick one of those courses if you are choosing a degree that keeps your options as wide open as possible. Partly because you probably don't even know half the jobs that are out there at this time. These days, variety of employment opportunities these days is so much bigger than it used to be.
Okay, excellent. So that, and again, we're going to start a story here. We're going to go along a story that, where you are now at your age group, it's going to be mainly about education, right? So it's, again, the theme here is not all education is created equal. There are ways of moving through education where you can actually think of creating options for your work life going forward. And you need to be thinking about what do you want? To Rodrigo's point is that I think all of us kind of sit here and say, I want to make a decent living. So I have money is not important to everyone, but a certain amount of money everyone needs. So you need to really think about what you're doing and how it helps you in, kind of get a job and kind of develop your career. The last thing is that life is continuous learning, right? I don't know anyone in my team, I'm looking at everyone, I'm always learning. I'm always taking courses. I'm always, it will be continuous learning. And that actually helps you in your existing role, but also in roles that you might be interested in moving to. So the next topic is work, which is how you make money. So you can't manage money unless you have money, right? So it really takes some time. I think John was saying is that most of us, when we're young, we don't even know what careers are out there. We don't know what jobs are out there. But start thinking about if you're at university, you're using your career center. Start using things like the organization, Migrant Leaders. How do I find people that do things that I think might be interesting, might be cool, might be something that I want to do? And go and talk to them. Most people are very happy to give, half an hour of their time, talk through, I'm an accountant at KPMG and this is what I've done. I'm a teacher, I'm a head teacher here and this is what I've done. Start developing a network, start developing your understanding. I think there's a really good, I don't know if anybody's watching the women's football, Go England. But the women's football team has a wonderful tagline. And if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? And that goes for a lot of things. A lot of us live in worlds where we don't see what the options are. We don't have access to lawyers. We don't have access to people with professional degrees. We don't have access to teachers. We don't have access. There are ways that you need to start being able to see what these opportunities in these professions are. So you start learning, right? And you learn to what we've talked about is that if that's where I want to be, what do I have to be doing now? What university degrees do I have to do? What other thing, what apprenticeships can I do, et cetera, to get there. I do have an outline. And decide, as we're talking about what's important to you. Money is the foundation, but it's not everything. Is travel important? Is working with people, working on sustainability, all of those things, those will help you define your journey, right? So take time to think about what journey you're on. It can always change. It doesn't have to be set in stone, but take time to think about that, right? I also do recommend, and this is me, and I think that maybe Rodrigo, Diego, and John might have different. I've worked since I was 13. I know child labor. No, I was babysitting at 13. But I decided that I wanted a bit of money to do other things. And in order to be a good babysitter, I went and got my first aid certificate, right? It's good to sell to parents that you could save, the baby if needed. But I've been working since I was 13. I worked all the way through high school. I worked all the way through university. I worked all the way through grad school. I've been working at a variety of different things. And what that has done for me, it's given me, what is your work ethic? Why is it important to show up on time? Why is it important to kind of understand what your role is, to work in teams, to work with different people? You also, doing the kind of those type of jobs, can kind of change them and see what's interesting. But it also gave me very early on an appreciation of having my own funds and having to manage my own funds. I had my own bank account, and that was my money to do that. But I do recommend that as you're going through university, as you're going through school, get a part-time job. Right. And I don't have time. Actually, I work better when I'm really busy because it makes me manage my time better. Right. So that's one of the recommendations I have. The other thing with work, with anything, please beware of your social media profile. When you are looking for jobs, an employer will look, and it's very easy to do, at your social media profile. If they want someone who's going to be responsible, show up on time, have the right attitude, they will be making judgments by what you post. So be very clear that your social media profile is the way you market yourself. And it's a very, very valuable tool. So it is just for whatever you do, whatever work you do, when you're trying to go for a loan at a bank, they will look at your social media profile. So I'm going to pause and see if my friends on the call want to say anything.
I can tell a bit of I have to talk about my journey, but I can tell a little bit what my work life was at the start, which is not too dissimilar. So as we said, we did a bit of a broad graduation. Economics can take you anywhere. I had no idea what I would like, not like. And when you're that young, you also don't know what your drivers are, what you actually really want in life. Everything's a bit experimental. So I ended up going to an investment banking. My very first job before I graduated was in investment banking. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Got there, and I was working 15, 16, 18 hours a day. It was absolute madness. I didn't have any parameters to compare to anything else. I just said, oh, this is how working looks like. You just work 12, 18 hours a day. And my entire circle of friends and everything was consumed by that life because you don't have time to do anything else. I did that for a couple of years. And then I started questioning myself. I'm not sure this is the right environment. Bear in mind, this is 1999. So it was a bit of a more toxic environment. Not happy. So I decided to go completely the opposite direction. I said, I'm going to go to a small firm to be kind of a sort of financial manager. Some startup wasn't even a word back then, but to some company that's just at the beginning to try to grow with it. So quit the bank, went to a media company. I went from a very sick, male-dominated environment to a media company. It was the best thing I could ever done from a social, personal point of view. I just found life. Money, not even half of what I was making, but it was very important for me to spend those 2 years outside the investment banking environment, seeing what was out there. And then I started thinking again, well, but this is too small. I won't be here for too long. It was great though. And then I decided, you know what, I need to English, because bear in mind, I come from Brazil, as I said, so I was in Brazil at this time. Everything I'm talking about is in Brazil. And I decided I need to, in a financial career, you have to speak English. And I did have an English education, so I had decent English, but I need to take this to the next level if I want to progress within finance. So I decided the only way to do it is if I actually go live abroad. So I went on took a working/student visa, and I moved to the UK, sold my car, sold everything I had in Brazil, packed my bags on my own, came to the UK to learn English, and I was allowed to work, I think 20 hours a week or whatever it was. Again, best year of my life. Worked in a bar, worked at a pub, made enough money to pay my bills, pay my rent. I lived in a student accommodation, improved my English, knew a bunch of people which I'm still in contact today, 22 years later, whatever it is. But I said, again, I can't just be working at a pub for the rest of my life. This is great. English is now good. Packed my bags again, moved back to Brazil, and said, well, now back to finance career. I've done investment banking. I don't want to go back there. I've done little companies, not going back there. Let's find a middle ground. And then I looked for jobs in big corporations where I could actually use the English, kind of keep using the English. So then I worked in a range of, and I do advise people to do it. It's great when people build a career for so long in one place, but it's so fruitful when you actually experiment other kind of different areas. So I worked in insurance, construction, media, again, TV company. I worked in lots of different, but they're all big corporations, like thousands of employee type corporations. And it was great. And I was stepping up as I was moving along, and it was all very interesting. But then again, I decided that I wanted to broaden my horizon, and all the companies I worked for were Brazilian, big companies, but Brazilian companies. And I decided I wanted to have a bit more of an international experience, get to know people from other countries, other backgrounds, and I kind of missed the year that I spent in the UK, really. So I need to. Then I started looking for jobs in international companies. I want to work somewhere where I can practice my English and meet other people. That's when I ended up in Anglo. So in 2009, I applied for a position in Anglo American in Brazil. So I started in Anglo in Brazil. And again, it was just amazing. It was a new business. We had people coming from all over the world. It was fantastic. And then he opened the door to apply for a job in Anglo America, in the UK. And then I moved 10 years ago to the UK, and the rest is history. And been jumping around different roles in Anglo American UK, coming from Brazil, ended up working with Sarah. And yes, I can give more details on that if people want more. I don't want to take too much more time, but that's a little bit of how I found myself within the finance career and trying to understand what are my drivers. And I came to the conclusion, doing all this journey that I talked about, For me, it wasn't all about money, for example. Otherwise, I would have just stayed in investment bank and made a career out of investment bank, because that's where the money was better. It's not just about position and status and continually going up. What I really like is the journey, is the going round and getting exposure to lots of different things and lots of different people and just keep learning. That's what motivates me. But making sure that I make a decent enough living. So I'm not saying money is not important, but I need to find the right balance between learning, being exposed to different things, making enough money to keep things going, keep me happy. And also work-life balance. That's something that I learned through this journey, that it is really important for me that I have boundaries between work and life, and I don't jeopardize beyond a certain point. So there's so much that energy and time that can put into work, but it's not just all about work either. There's family, there's friends, and other things.
Rodrigo, that's been really interesting. Do you mind if I ask you a question? Relating back to what you were talking about, relocating to learn English and doing jobs that were not in relation to your qualifications. So one of the things that we told our students we'd be talking about is the benefits of budgeting and deferred gratification. So how much of that came into your life when you were doing jobs in bars, that sort of thing?
Oh my God, yes, so much.
Actually, Rodrigo, do it quickly, because that's the next step of this kind of conversation. It's kind of the home truths of money, right? So yes, I mean, budgeting's got to be really important.
It was really important. So I came from Brazil to the UK at the time when the FX rate was like 1 to 6. So even if I was sort of okay in Brazil, the money I brought into the UK translated into not much. So essentially I had to work in the UK to make ends meet. I didn't come here with the whole money to live a whole year. And it was really tight, because so things that I didn't have to do back home, budgeting for small things and how much money I was spending in food and how much money was left after rent. In Brazil, I had a more comfortable life. In the UK, I was literally managing my money by the pound. I knew exactly how much money, how many hours I had to work, how much money I had to make, and how much was going on rent. And I had kind of in my mind, it was a bit of a daily allowance. So this is how much money I can spend every day above my sort of fixed expense. And if I spend more a day, like go out and do something else, then I knew I had to hold back the next days. I had to sort of day average budgeting that I lived on for a whole year. It was really different mindset from coming from Brazil, where I didn't it's not that I didn't have to think about money, but I didn't have to think about money at that level of control.
Yeah. So I think that what I'll do is I'll go through kind of so we've talked about kind of education, we've talked about work, which is how you actually make the money to manage, right? We'll go through some of what I would pull out as the kind of basic truths of managing your money. And then we'll kind of flip to kind of John Diego to kind of talk about their journeys as well, and maybe fold in some. I know I've made mistakes on my money journey as well, but again, I'll reemphasize, no matter what you do, no matter where you are, no matter what role you have, what you do, there's absolutely no excuse in my book not to know how to manage your money. There are managing your money for dummies. There are plenty of videos on YouTube. There are courses you can take in the evening. And again, I will go back, it's a fundamental skill to actually, money is a foundation for your life. Understand how to manage it. But going through that, we've talked about work, right? And at work, you get a paycheck every month. Know what that paycheck means, right? Have a look at it, especially if you're being paid on an hourly basis. Make sure they're paying you right. And if you have any questions, ask your employer. Know that you're getting paid what you should be getting paid. Even at Anglo American, we check it, don't we? Because I've seen mistakes that big companies like Anglo American can make as well. So make sure you understand what you should be paid, what the deductions are, and manage that. And then we talk about budget. Budget is very simply know what money is coming in and know what money you're spending, where it's all going, what you're spending out. It sounds easy. Human beings are appalling at budgeting. Most people are. So most people can sit there and say, okay, I've got X amount coming in and I'll write down everything and they know what's going out. And then they see, a really nice new pair of tennis shoes and they go, oh, I've got to buy those, and it blows all out the window. That's natural. I mean, there's a whole area of economics called behavioral economics that studied that, people are just not good at budgeting. But it is very, very important you do. How I do it, and again, there are various apps. If you have a bank account at a NatWest or something, they have tools for you to help you budget. How I do it, or how I used to do it when I was young, is I would have, very simply because I'm visual, I would write it down. I'd write down every day everything I spent, and then I'd put it into a spreadsheet. Rodrigo probably did a whole spreadsheet, right? But it's really important that you know how much you have and how much you're spending, because we'll get on to the next one, which is credit, right? Have a bank account, by the way. Bank accounts are good. Open a banking account, open a current account. If you can, get a debit card. Make sure you do not go overdraft on your debit card so you know how much money is in that account. Overdrafts are expensive. So budgeting is really important. It's difficult and it takes discipline. What do you do? So what do people look to if they don't have enough money to spend on what they want? You can look at things like credit cards. Credit cards, I always want to say, are a necessary evil. They have a few good things and a few really bad things, and you just need to be aware of that. Credit cards will loan you money. It's a loan, and it's a very, very expensive loan. I think credit card rates for young people now can be up to 30% per annum. What that means is if you spend £100 on a pair of shoes or 2 pairs of shoes, and that you will be actually paying £130 for them if you don't pay the credit card off over a period of time. So it's a very expensive way of borrowing money, and people can get in trouble with credit cards really, really easily. You spend too much money and you can't pay it off. So be very, very careful with credit cards. Again, when you're going through your budgeting, if you don't have enough money and you need to use your credit card, make sure it's for something that you know you can pay off, which is actually part of your budgeting as well, right? Now, I'm going to go on to credit scores, and this is probably something that is a bit tedious, but it's also exceedingly important as you go through life. When you go to a bank and you say, I want a loan to buy a car, I want a mortgage to buy a house. When you go and rent an apartment, that a lot of times, most times, the entity doing the borrowing or renting your apartment will look at your credit scores. Credit scores is really a risk assessment of how do they think, are you going to be able to pay back the loan, or are you going to be able to pay your mortgage on a monthly basis? It's easier to maintain a good credit score than to get a bad credit score and then try to rebuild it. So if you can maintain a good credit score, what do you need to do? There are various websites that you can kind of look at your credit score. Do not pay people don't pay for that. It should be free. If you have bills, pay them on time. If you have credit cards, pay the payments on time. Never, ever use a payday loan. The moment you use a payday loan is the moment your credit scores get kind of negated. Be very careful with these kind of buy now, pay later that you can get from big organizations. They can actually impact, especially if you don't pay the later or you're late paying the later, they can impact your credit cards or your credit scores. So again, another kind of thing they say is that register to vote, right? You know, people like to see that you're kind of voting and it's part of what you do. But credit scores are something you should be aware of. Again, going back to education, really easy to find out on the internet. What is a credit card? How do I maintain it? What are the key components? What is mine? But that is something that as you go through your whole life is really important to keep in a good place. And it goes right back to budgeting, right? If you can't pay for it, then you're late with your payments and it affects your credit score. The other thing when you're looking at getting a mortgage or renting an apartment, again, social media, people are going to look at your social media profile and say, is this the kind of person I want to rent this flat to? So that make sure you're thinking about your social media accounts as a way of marketing the best side of you, right? Yeah, it's not about talking about the parties you went to at the weekend, is that be very responsible about what your posts are. The other thing on that is be quite careful about when you're renting a flat or you're living with someone and you have joint bills. Because if the other person doesn't make the payment, it goes against you as well. Best to have separate bills if you can, or just make sure you're managing that really careful. And if you do move out, make sure that you normalize that very quickly. And I think it goes without saying, but never, ever, ever, ever share personal details, credit card details, debit card details, or bank accounts with anyone that you don't 100% trust. So I'm going to go and just go through on a bit of savings. But again, any questions are welcome. Savings are good, right? And there are different ways of saving, right? The earlier you start saving, the easier it is to build a pot for things like retirement. I know that's a really long way off, but you get something, again, education, a compounded interest, right? Which actually just benefits, it just continues to grow on top of it. Saving, so I was looking, they recommend that, in your life when you're working, is that you should have about 3 or 4 months cash in the bank saved. So if anything happens, you lose your job, you get sick or something, that you have a bit of a cushion, right? So that is kind of a basic saving level. The other savings is to think about long-term. I like ISAs. I like the lifetime ISA, which is a great thing that the government does for younger people. But again, the more max out your retirement plan at work. If you're at work, max it out because the company contributes. And the other one is please, 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 if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Do not go anywhere near it. If someone comes and say, oh, invest in this and you'll make a 40% return, don't go anywhere near it. And if you don't understand what you're investing in, don't invest, right? And I will look at things like cryptocurrencies as one of those. You see the meltdown in cryptocurrencies. People were just piling in on that on the back of social media and things, recommendations. And that actually, if you look historically, there's a reason that cryptocurrencies came about, but what they were today is a bit of that the fall of cryptocurrencies is really because people didn't really understand what they are. So too good to be true. It's too good to be true. Do not go anywhere near it, and really understand what you invest in. Really take the time to understand, because that's how scams work. That's how Ponzi schemes work, is that they get gullible investors that are, because, you know, my friend said I should do this, invest in that. So I think those are just my general tips for managing. It's a huge subject, but there is a lot of education on that. But I don't know, John, if you want to kind of talk a bit, if it works. I don't know. I'm looking, your career, kind of how you've managed your money, any pitfalls, any mistakes you've done. I've fallen for Ponzi schemes. I actually invested £1,000 in something I should not have gone anywhere near on someone's recommendation. I thought I could trust them, and I could not. So it's just, we all do it.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's lots of good advice, Sarah. I mean, you're right, credit cards can be really useful, and you can get things like free airline points, but pay them off every month. Otherwise, you'd be better off buying the airline ticket than getting the points that way. Pensions, I've always been quite keen to put money into pensions ever since I've had a pension. And by law now in the UK, every employer has to offer a pension. And that might give you some good opportunities to top that up, either on a regular basis or on a one-off basis if you've got a bit of extra money. Of course, the challenge with pensions is you can't get them out until you're 55. So that's why ISAs are so important. And so, if you have a bit of savings money, put a bit into your pension, but also put a bit into ISAs, because ISAs you can, which is short for individual savings account. And as Sarah says, there's this particular one now for young people, which actually has a government top up. So the general benefit of an ISA is everything, all the profit you make from it is tax free. But also there's a lifetime ISA where the government actually adds a contribution to your savings as well, which is also tax free. And the good thing about ISAs, apart from the tax benefits, is you can actually access them. So me and my wife have accessed our ISAs before, for example, when we're buying a new house and refurbishing. So they're not quite as restricted, but they're really important. And as Sarah says, if you don't know the phrase, the power of compound interest, Google it, because it's an incredible thing. And basically, if you're getting a 5% return on £100, the first year you get a £5 return, and then you get the 5% on £105, and actually over not that many years, your £100 becomes £200 and then £400, and certainly over the course of your working life it would do, just with the simple 5% growth. So that's really important. And I completely agree. Don't invest in anything you don't understand. I've never gone anywhere near cryptocurrency because I cannot understand where the underlying value is. Now, some people have made money off crypto, but lots more people will have lost money. And what you really have to be careful of when you're investing is not being taken in by really compelling anecdotes, because people can sell those and they can, I invested in this stock, and it made me this much money. If you invest in 100 stocks, some of them will make you a lot of money, but most of them will lose you money. And that's the reality. And you only ever hear about people talking about their successes. And all the evidence is that unless you're really, really good and really, really knowledgeable about the companies and the sectors that you might want to invest in, the safest thing if you want to invest in stocks and shares, for example, is just to invest in something called a unit trust or a tracker fund, which just tracks general stock markets. When you get a bit more money, if you get a bit more expert, you become an expert in mining finance, for example, you might want to start investing in particular mining companies or particular tech companies or particular car companies, for example, if you understand those sectors. But if you don't understand those sectors, just be aware there are people in the city of London, in New York, in Frankfurt, Tokyo, and Hong Kong who spend their whole lives studying maybe 50, 60 companies and will know far more about those companies than you ever will. And if you outperform them, it's almost certainly luck. So stick to low risk investing. If you want to have a bit of fun with an investment club, there are safe ways to do that. If you can save a bit, save early and balance it between ISAs and pensions, so you've always got that bit of flexibility. you know, and you never know, you know, when you might need that money. It might be because you lose your job. It might be because, you know, you might have a family, you might have a year where you don't have the income you normally had, or your expenses go up. So it's really good advice to have a rainy day fund.
Yep.
Sorry, Sarah, there's a few questions on the chat, just so you know, because I'm mindful of time also. We have 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Using the credit card as a regular payment card, what the recommendation is on credit card, it is good to have a small balance on a credit card and pay it off every month. And that will help your credit score, right? And then you also have a credit card for emergencies, but it's not just for emergencies. It's just thinking of it as something that just, if you have 100 pounds on it and you're paying, I don't know, 20 pounds off a month, right? That actually is beneficial for your credit card because they see that you are paying on time and you're paying the amount that you need. So that's a good way of using a credit card for credit scores. I think John talked about index funds. I'm a firm believer in index funds.
Can you explain what you mean by index funds? I'm not sure I understand that.
Yeah, that's fine. So if you're, you can invest in and John and Rodrigo, I might use the American terms, so you might want to correct me. It's a mutual fund, just like an ISA. So you're investing in a company that manages a fund of money, and they invest in the stock market, right?
So it's a managed investment.
And what I look for when I'm investing, and when you're doing an ISA, you can invest in funds, right, as part of your ISA investment. I look for entities that have that are indexed and the lowest management fees. It comes back to, as John was saying, this kind of compounded interest. The stock market, if you look at it over time, if you look at it in a 10, 20, 30-year period, which is probably a good time horizon, goes up. It goes up and down in the middle. So what you don't want to be doing is flipping in and out. So if you have an investment, the good example is at the moment, you know, people are investing in tech, people are investing in a lot of things. I think the market's off like 20, 25% from the beginning of the year. The best thing to do is just hold on. It will come back. But if you're chopping and changing, to John's point, is that we're not the experts, is just take the long view with those type of investments.
So yeah. I think we're kind of straying onto areas which a lot of our students won't really be thinking about at the moment, because they're probably, you know, at the lower end of the earning scale, and actually thinking about day-to-day living and managing, you know, small amounts of money and not really thinking about investment. So one of the questions that's come up is whether to have a specialized student account when you're at university, or whether to have an ordinary bank account. Yeah, I mean, I've got a few, but I'd be interested.
Can I jump in? Sarah. So I did have one when I was a student. This was several years ago. I think a lot of the banks I now have catered products and solutions for students better than they did in my days.
Definitely.
But I think for me, the big lessons learned is when I earned my first salaries working part-time while I was studying and after full-time, is that I was really clear that as soon as that money came into my bank, I would put immediately the money aside that I wanted to pay my bills and then save. And only the rest I would use to buy shoes or go out for a drink or go on a date, whatever it is. I think that budgeting process and that saving expectation, other people do it the other way. They do, I want to buy this and then I'm going to see what I can live with. And I think there's a point about being that disciplined, which for me really helped. I was not a chartered accountant, and I made a lot of mistakes, like, you know, Sarah alluded to a few of them, and so did others here. But one thing is for sure, it's a lot more difficult to make money than spend it, and I remember that clearly. Two, you start giving a lot more value to the money. So when you talk about your parents and your families and the kind of amount of obligations and liabilities they have, costs on a weekly, monthly basis, I hope that it really opens up your eyes, because they have made utmost sacrifices to give you everything you need and can. I hope you had the parents that I did. And sometimes saying no, it's necessary, because my parents didn't have the money that I want them to have. And I think, sorry, Sarah, but I just wanted to mention that, because I was thinking, if I gave advice to my younger self, what would I want him to understand better? And those 2 points really came to my head. So apologies to jump in, but I just wanted to make that point about budgeting and the value of money.
I would actually add, in terms of student bank accounts, and Diego's quite right. When he and I were probably studying, student bank accounts were just ordinary bank accounts. They didn't give all the perks that they offer now. So I think it's a really good idea to investigate all the different suppliers of student bank accounts, because they give you all sorts of perks. I know last year there were some that were offering laptops, some were offering student rail cards, that sort of thing. So it's worth looking to see where the best benefit is. The other thing is different student accounts allow different rates of overdraft, volume of overdraft, as opposed to the interest rate on overdraft. So again, that's worth looking at if you think you're going to have to use an overdraft. My final bit of advice on credit cards would be, keep your receipts so you know what you're spending. And I still have a box up here on my shelf where I keep my receipts, and I clear my credit card every month. So if you can do that, then at least you're managing your funds. So I manage my funds in advance of my credit card bill coming out.
Yep.
And there are some good websites that you can look at for best deals. So things like Money Saving Expert, which is Martin Lewis, who's quite a prominent commentator on value for money deals. He's really good, and he's unbiased. He doesn't take money from sponsors to promote things. And then other websites like Money Supermarket or Compare the Market, for example, they do promote, but you can still look at the information and see which ones are best. So there's a lot of information out there that's really easily accessible. And yeah, check your credit cards, because credit card fraud is also quite prominent. So most people do it by an app these days, but yeah, check your app once a week to check that there's, and importantly, if there's a charge on your credit card that you didn't authorize, you have no legal obligation to pay it. It's entirely up to the credit card company to fix, not you. So if you do have fraudulent use of your cards, a credit card in particular, not a debit card, but a credit card, then you're protected. And so that is a good reason for using a credit card at a time when there's a lot of credit fraud around.
Thanks very much, John. And on that note, we're going to have to wind up, I'm afraid. Thank you very much for all your contributions. Really interesting to hear everybody's experiences about managing their finances and earning their money. So thank you very much, Sarah, John, Rodrigo, and Diego. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.